right, Russia's Lavrov, either UKR fulfills Moscow's proposals or our army will decide. Basically saying you either negotiate to our terms or we're going to take it by force. It says that Moscow's proposals for settlement in Ukraine are well known to Kiev, and either Ukraine fulfills them or their own good, or the Russian army will decide the issue. TASS agency quoted Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov as saying, it says, our proposals for the demilitarization and denazification of the territories controlled by the regime, the elimination of threats to Russia's security emanating from there, including our new lands, are well known to the enemy, the state news agency quoted Lavrov as saying late on Monday. The point is simple: fulfill them for your own good. Otherwise, the issue will be decided by the Russian army. Moscow, of course, has been calling it the invasion of UKR a special military operation to demilitarize and to denazify its neighbor. Kiev and its Western allies call it an imperial-style aggression to grab land. Now, this is what we talked about the other night as far as they said that they're ready to negotiate. Essentially, their terms are put down all of your weapons. We kind of knew that this was coming. It was kind of predictable. You guys called it, and so did we. So we'll be talking about this and much, much more tonight on tonight's show. It is a live show. We've lost power a couple times here. We're actually running a little bit late. Hopefully we keep that power, but we are going to be going over everything that has happened in the last 24 hours, including a ton of stuff going on with Taiwan, Japan, of course, UKR, and of course, Russia, and what is going on in the social space. So we'll be right back with all of that. Thank you for tuning in. This is Marfoogle News. Nothing in the show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. All right, and a quick word from our sponsor, $2,000. That's where gold is headed. The growth will continue throughout 2023 with the gold prices remaining elevated at an average price of $2,086 an ounce. This is all according to the Bank of America, and it looks like they are right. At the beginning of December, gold crossed the $1,800 mark and is still climbing. If this year has taught us anything, is that tangible assets are the only assets that you can count on, like gold. It's time to open a gold IRA. Crypto keeps on tanking. Stocks are too volatile. Gold in your IRA is steady. So what are you waiting for? It's not too late. Thousands of people have retired comfortably with the help of Noble Gold Investments and their gold and silver IRAs. If you have been a hesitant investor, but one of the handful of Americans who can go for gold and silver in your IRA, now is the time to act. If you get in before the end of the month, you'll be able to bag an incredible free 3-ounce silver American Virtue coin with every qualified IRA over $20,000 or above. You can't go wrong with Noble Gold Investments. Call 1-877-646-5347 to find out more, or visit noblegoldinvestments.com. All right, let's get into the news. What a wild, wild day is today. All right, if you are new here, remember you can always go over to marfooglenews.com and you can find, of course, you can sign up for our email list, but you can also get notifications directly from us. We also take the time before every single show to make sure that we have every single article, tweet, video, picture, document there. Now, it is very easy to navigate. You just look for today's thumbnail, moving missiles, nations preparing, and then once you click on that, it will bring you to every single article, tweet, video, picture, document that we have here. Of course, we are independent. We are on our own. We have done all of everything that we have done here. We have done with myself, Dex, our mods, and then, of course, the Foogle fam. We don't have a multi-channel network. We don't have a multi-billion-dollar company behind us. We have you guys. So make sure, more important than anything, more important than supporting our affiliates or donating, make sure to share us out to your friends and family. Make sure to share us out to your coworkers. Make sure to share us out on social medias. Thank you so much. All right, let's bring in my internet brother / co-host, Dex James. What is going on, and how are you doing today?
Hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I'm doing just fine.
If for any reason our power goes off, make sure to go check out marfooglenews.com/friends. You will see that there is a whole list of great channels over there, including all of our mods, and of course, great channels that are all looking to be at a milestone almost. You have, of course, BP Earthwatch almost to 150,000. Mind you, he not only got to 100,000 after getting taken down, he is almost to 150,000. He was actually at 500,000 before he got taken down for what most of us agree was BS reasons. And then, of course, Jacob's Ladder is almost at 200,000. Willing Witness almost at 110. And then, of course, you have Donut Factory sitting there right almost at 100,000. So make sure to go over and push them up. And then Alaska Prepper almost all at 200,000 as well. So make sure to subscribe to those people. They're all great people that we personally vouch for. All right. Dex, let's talk about the first story here. Lavrov saying these things. This is exactly what we predicted, and most everybody at home did too.
Yeah, this is exactly what we expected when they said, "Oh, we're ready to talk." In reality, they're ready to talk, but the talk they want to have is not one that we're certain the other side is going to be willing to have. It was just like Zelensky's original talking points when he said, "I'll negotiate only if Vlad is completely removed or even worse, perished." So, these types of bold statements are, they're not necessarily the types of statements that anybody can really get behind and say, well, okay, we'll just all come together and agree upon that. It sounds pretty terse. I think this is the follow-up to that that article we talked about yesterday, where they said they are willing to talk, but it seems like the message they have to speak about is not one that is going to be well received at all.
No, and it's pretty predictable what they do at this point. There's a lot of patterns you can see when you follow this, and obviously this was what people expected was going to happen. But it also says that something may be right around the corner. And then after a deadly buffalo blizzard, families scramble to find food and essentials. It said families in Western New York are scrambling to find food, medicine, and other essentials Monday after a historic blizzard blocked roads and cut off electricity, forcing many major supermarkets and pharmacies to close. It says in Buffalo, where at least 18 people have perished, the two largest supermarket chains have been closed since Friday, as the latest forecast called for another 6 to 12 inches of snow. There are no stores open. It's whatever you can grab, said Scott McCandless, 54, who lives in Orchard Park. So I want to point out, myself and many of my peers have been telling everybody for years now, this is why what happens. This is why preppers prep. If you lived here in the Buffalo area, it's like the stores aren't even open. It's not that their shelves aren't empty or that they're empty. It's literally that they have not opened up. There's nobody there to run the store. As far as what this can cause, I mean, obviously, if there's no stores to go buy food, that's a really bad situation. And as far as when you add in 6 to 12 inches of snow and not being able to get anywhere else, this is where people die. This is why it is smart to have more than 3 days of food in your fridge, because you don't know if there's going to be some sort of freak event. This was a once-in-a-lifetime event, or at least that's what they called it. We don't know if they pushed a button for it or whatever happened for it, but we do know it was one of these things that I've never seen in my life. All 48 states basically saw cold, including California, and parts of it were, in the low 10s, right? So this is something that we've really never seen in at least my life in 35 years, and most of you probably haven't seen in yours as well. They said it was a once-in-a-generation thing. Well, guess what? These once-in-a-generation things happen on all different subsets of events that happen, and people aren't prepared for it. This is why preppers prep. You don't get car insurance because you know you're going to get in an accident. You get it because you think you might. This is why preppers get food and water and things like this. The stores being closed, that's insane. Again, if you're in Buffalo or any other state that is having issues right now and you have a crazy story, please let us know in the comments below. Send me an email. I'd love to hear what happened to you. And then, of course, military bases in the U.S. that housed Afghan evacuees incurred $250 million in damage, according to the Pentagon. So we'll go over that in just a second. Mike Coben says, hello, what's going on? Dsum Haya, Digital Mouse, Scooby-Doo right? Wages World, -51 wind chill here in central Indiana. That's nuts. This is something that we have not ever seen in our lifetimes. I have never seen it. Sign Digger, what's going on? San Diego Scott, Nate Dampier, what's going on? Jalisa, Angelo Solano, Searching for Answers, Wicked World, Vic, Jammer One, Victoria, and everybody else that has popped in tonight. Thank you for coming to the late show. I don't think you'll regret watching tonight's show because we have a ton to go over and a lot of really insane stuff. ATX1 says UKR needs more money. I don't know if that's sarcasm or if it is genuine support, but there are people that are definitely split on that for sure. Tristan Early, thank you for literally being early and being the first one in the door with the super chat. I appreciate that. Says credit cards coming due with the 1111 super chat. Thank you so much. Beachy says, I love the show. Hey, well, thank you for watching, and I appreciate you, spending your time here. I know you could be doing a million other things, so I appreciate you giving us even a few minutes of your day. Your time is valued. But as far as the military bases that housed, it apparently says after the U.S. Air Force managed the largest humanitarian evacuation in its history in August 2021, refugees from Afghanistan were housed in Texas, New Jersey, Wisconsin, Indiana, Virginia, and New Mexico. And it said that military bases that housed tens of thousands of Afghan refugees in the U.S. incurred almost $260 million in damages that in some cases rendered buildings unusable for troops until significant repairs to walls and plumbing are made. The Pentagon Inspector General found. It said that over the last 2 weeks of August 2021, the U.S. Air Force managed the largest humanitarian evacuation in its history, airlifting 120,000 people from Afghanistan in just 17 days. Now, I don't think it went so smoothly, but again, if you remember what happened there, it was pretty bad. The bulk of those passengers were Afghans fleeing Taliban rule, and U.S. aircraft delivered tens of thousands of those Afghans initially to bases in Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Spain, Italy, Bahrain, and Germany. It said after processing, many of the refugees were flown to 8 military bases in the U.S., where many were housed for months as they waited visa processing and resettlement. The last Afghan refugee left military housing in February. What's crazy is, just a side point, months is a long time to wait when you're in a in-between situation, but as far as waiting for visas and things, I don't know I don't know what level of visas they got, but I know people that waited years and years to get in. So maybe some of these folks ended up getting lucky and got fast-tracked through a lot of that. Dex, so basically they're saying that there was a lot of damage done to these places. Is that right?
They're saying basically they're calling it wear and tear, but I have a sneaking suspicion there's a little bit more than just wear and tear. Obviously, when you put too many people in a small space, there's going to be additional wear and tear than you're used to. But to find that walls needed to be repaired and plumbing needs to be repaired just leads me to think that there's a little bit more than just the day-to-day wear to tear that goes on in a building.
But one thing I don't get about is like wear and tear. How much money was this? There was a number in here that they said this was in the millions, $260 million in damages. How is that wear and tear? I'm sorry, but when you look at the actual places they're housing, that looks like did they blow things up? How did they do that much damage to the barracks? Doesn't make too much sense. Maybe this is just a way for them to shift money to this base. I don't know. But again, that's an insane amount of money. Dex, go ahead.
I was going to say rock stars don't create that much damage in a hotel room.
$260 million, even if they were smashing every single wall. Think about that. 260. How many people were housed? 120,000 people were housed. That's how would you even do the math on that? That's so. You could have put them in mansions for 260 million. You could have rented out mansions for those 120,000 people for that much, or at least you could rent out a mansion for 20 people at a time and have them live for a year with that kind of money. I don't understand what happened there. And then on sale on eBay, a military database of fingerprints and iris scans. No joke. Dex, do you want to go over this? Apparently, this is something you can buy now, right?
Apparently, somebody actually bought it and found that it contained a whole bunch of stuff. So a shoebox-shaped device designed to capture fingerprints and perform iris scans. It was listed on eBay for $149. A German security researcher, Matthias Marx, successfully offered $68. And when it arrived at his home in Hamburg in August, the rugged handheld machine contained more than what was promised in the listing. Basically, they found all of this data about all the people that were in there, basically 2,632 people, photos, names, fingerprints, iris scans, etc.
And they didn't even get it for the whole $100 and whatever dollars it was listed for. They got it for $68. It says the shoebox-shaped device designed to capture fingerprints and perform iris scans was listed on eBay for $150. A German security researcher, Matthias Marx, successfully got it for $68. It says the device's memory card held the names, nationalities, photographs, fingerprints, and iris scans of over 2,500 people. It says most people in the database, which was reviewed by the New York Times, were from Afghanistan and Iraq. Well, maybe they can use that information to track down the people who damaged stuff, right? It says many were known terrorists. No joke. Somebody who bought a box off of eBay somehow was able to attain information on potentially 2,500 T-cell people, right? I mean, like, this is nuts. This is the kind of stuff that happens with the new tech age. And then Congress tells the Air Force to upgrade ship lanes as Arctic heats up. We have covered a lot of the different things that are going on in the Arctic. Of course, Russia has been, they didn't triple, they didn't quadruple, they didn't quintuple. They said that they had increased the size of all of their military bases up there by 12 times. So in a short amount of time, they have essentially built up this massive, massive forward operating base in the Arctic, or at least that's what we hear. And it said that Congress is urging the Air Force to start sketching out what it needs to have in a future fleet of skip lanes to help protect the Arctic. It says lawmakers want to get a head start on designing a new set of C-130 airframes that could replace the service's LC-130H Hercules, also known as ski birds. Proactively swapping out the polar airlift fleet could help the U.S. keep pace with Russian and Chinese expansion in the Arctic, according to a provision tucked into the fiscal 2023 omnibus spending bill. It said that given our ever-increasing importance of the polar regions in our national defense strategy and our adversaries' excursion into those regions, the Congress believes that this vital capability must be maintained, modernized, and eventually replaced in an appropriate and timely fashion, the legislation said. It said the $1.7 trillion appropriations package cleared Congress on December 23rd, and President JB is expected to sign it into law ahead of the Friday deadline to fund the government. It said the New York Air National Guard's 109th Airlift Wing owns the 10 LC-130H planes that differ from the rest of the cargo fleet in one significant way. Giant Teflon-coated skis allow the aircraft to land on ice and snow. It says the ski planes regularly travel to Greenland and Antarctica in support of homeland defense missions and scientific expeditions. It said the CH-130Hs first entered service in the 1960s. The Air Force is now outfitting the ski planes with modern avionics and engines. So they're definitely putting a bigger emphasis on the Arctic and being able to put these planes up there, whatever they're loading up there, we don't know. Maybe it's a scene out of Greenland. Maybe they're going up into a mountain for when the asteroid hits. I don't know. But what I do know is there's been a buttload of money. It's pretty crazy to see that something like a Hercules with actual, type, they're not skis, but they kind of look like it, and be able to actually land on snow like that. So these, I don't think, there's no pictures of it actually equipped. Yes, it is. Okay, there we go. So these are what it has on it, so you can actually land on snow and ice, which is pretty freaking cool. Dex, what do you think about them outfitting the Arctic and trying to catch up with Russia and China? Do you think that they're trying to set up something to be able to defend our country from there, or to be able to strategically be able to advance, or what do you think it's for?
It's clear that we need to spend. It's clear that both Xi and Vlad have invested heavily there. We've talked about all of the advancements they've done. We've talked about the bases they're building, how those bases keep expanding, and we haven't done much. We've talked a lot about it, but this is an exact action, one of many I'm sure we'll be taking. But this one was able to be plucked out of that giant bill that's so huge that I'm sure nobody has read, where they actually found something that we're actually spending money on to help improve our position against them, because the Arctic has become a much more serious playground, so to speak, when it comes to military assets.
Hendrik No Naughty says World War III has already began. Many of us believe that it's already been in play for a long time. I don't know what date you would put on it. When people hear WW3 or World War III, they think that it's the end of the world. I don't think so. I think it's going to be our generation's World War II. Probably a lot of people will be lost if something else doesn't happen first. I want to remind you, make sure to go watch the video over on Marfoogle News yesterday, and then also watch the show last night. We talked about it pretty in depth, about what is going on with the exercises being done for a future event that hasn't happened yet. It's the same kind of exercise that happened right before CV, before what happened in 2019. And it's put on by the same exact people. The same exact graphs are coming out. The same exact predictions are coming out. And they're basically saying that all of the stuff that happened to us in 2019 and 2020 in this scenario would happen again, only this time it would be catastrophic. It's literally part of the name of the exercises. A contagion, right? So make sure to go look at last night's show. But again, as far as like this starting, it's already started. Quick reminder, make sure to go over to Energy if you haven't already. Our power has gone out so many times. This has come into handy so many times. I have the Flex 1500 and the LT, the smaller version. But if you do want to get backup power, I would get the best. This is built like a tank. It is a solar generator that you do not need gas for. It is absolutely silent, so you can go stealth. And, of course, it works like Legos. The Flex 1500 has the batteries that stack. They literally stack like Lego bricks. There is no external cords unless you go over 5 batteries. Then you just have one cord that connects the stacks of 5. But the cool part, you can expand it up to 96 batteries. So essentially, you can have a whole wall of power, or you can have, just the head unit with 1 battery or 2 batteries or 3 batteries, and just take it with you, grab it by the handle, they lock together, and then you have power. Not only that, if you have some solar panels matched with it, of course, you have unlimited power. As long as the sun comes up the next day, you will have power to spare. As far as the lithium technology in it, it is in high demand and in low supply. There is a waiting list for all of their units. You would want to get your name on one as soon as possible. If you want it, just to be realistic, you won't be able to get it for the next week, or even most likely in the Flex 1500 case, you will get it either in a month or in a couple months. It is a long waiting list. But again, I wouldn't have that discourage you. It's better than buying some YouTube ad generator that's going to be crap. You definitely want to go with the best on something like this. This can last decades, and it can provide power in all sorts of conditions, from storms to power outages, and it's definitely come in handy here. I've used it for camping trips. I've used it for powering power drills. I've used it for powering everything. I've even used it for the Xbox and things when I couldn't get it close enough to an outlet for my kids. So again, make sure to go check it out. marfugglenews.com/energy. And you can get upwards of $170 off at the same time support our independent channel. Right now, the X2 is shipping out sooner than that. That's an all built-in one to compete with all of these crazy other ones that are out there. This one will ship out sooner. It is definitely a very, very impressive unit, and it is all built in one. This is what a majority of the people will end up getting because it is just an all-in-one. It has all the features, and it's a UPS system, which means uninterrupted power supply. When your power goes off, it will switch right over in less than 10 milliseconds to this. So very cool. The Flex is an EPS, an emergency power supply, which is, I believe, like 30 milliseconds or something. So again, make sure to go check it out. marfugglenews.com/energy. Again, that has some of the best technology in it. It will last years upon years upon years and it has one of the best battery technologies as well, as far as having that battery last a very, 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 very long time. And then South Korea sends drones to Kim Jong-un's airspace in unprecedented move. I don't know how many times we've read the word unprecedented in the last couple years, but it seems like it's on a daily basis. And unprecedented is supposed to be like, this is something unheard of, right? And it is. As far as most of the things going on, there's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of Ganda going on, but I see less of the Ganda and more of the confirmations coming out from, because we have people in South Korea, Foogle fam, that watch, and they say that a lot of the stuff that comes out of South Korea and North Korea is actually pretty accurate. Maybe because they don't have so much reason to BS about it. I don't know. Maybe because there's less money involved. It seems like anywhere there's huge money involved with the U.S. government or any other government or NATO allies and a government, that's where you see a lot of Ganda back and forth. But what is happening with SK and NK, North and the South Koreas, they are having some serious issues. And they actually clapped back at them. Dex, do you want to talk about what they were talking about here with the missile program and what's happened and all of the different events that have gone back and forth, kind of tit for tats, but this time they actually did a tat.
Yeah, this is the tat. So we talked about the attempt to shoot down the incursion that came from NK. We talked about and reported about that yesterday. And they actually, and this is an overflow, they actually apologized. They being SK apologized for their inability to shoot him down. They said, we're sorry we didn't get him the way we should have. But the tat here is that they turned around and sent their drones over the airspace. So look, we thought it was a big deal yesterday when NK crossed over. This is an even bigger deal. And of course it is tit for tat, as everybody calls it, as they call it here in the article too. But this level of escalation is getting really to a different level. I mean, we've heard in years past, the occasional, shot fired across the DMZ and stuff like that. Nothing, major. But now we're seeing these things move into their airspace, and it's not just the random, patrol officer out there just being stupid and firing off across the DMZ. This is pretty serious. So as we see how this continues to escalate, I mean, the next step from here is going to, where do you go from here, right? The next step is something much more serious, and it doesn't seem like either side is letting up. They always return back in some sort of similar fashion, whether it's a huge drill right up the side of their coast, from the allies here in the West, or NK firing off ICBMs over Japan, or launching shells across the border towards SK. So we're going to see how this keeps going, but right now it doesn't look like it's heading in the right direction at all. It doesn't look good at all.
So Seahart Think asked, were the drones armed? Whether they were not, and by the way, there are some folks that I've had even email me, and when we talk about the drones, they ask, I've had those things buzzing over my house all the time. Why do people make such a big deal out of them? We're talking about actual life-size, plane-sized drones that can deliver any kind of munitions, as far as whether they're armed or not. If you end up seeing an actual Predator type drone or whatever they end up having, and I believe they have some of our drones from us. They might even have our Predators, or the other one, whatever, the Nighthawk or whatever the other one is called. But these are actual plane-sized drones, and they're going over into the actual border. They're not going over the ADIZ zone or the identification zones. This is going into their border. If it was armed or not, as far as if they see something like this come over their border, it's a huge escalation. They ended up, North Korea ended up sending 5 drones into South Korea. They ended up clapping back and sending a drone back. The thing is, now that we even have drones, that is going to be warfare. Like I said, 5 years ago, before a lot of these, I mean, we had drones, but they were used in the Middle East. They were used to target things, very specific hits, and they were able to hit targets from 1,000, 2,000 miles away, as far as somebody would be controlling it in LA or something, right? Or wherever the United States office is, they were controlling them. But the point is I said it was going to be bonkers in the future. It's going to be drones versus drones. If they didn't have this drone technology, that would have been a plane. That would have been a pilot. But since they have the ability to not risk a life, they can do this stuff without doing that with these huge drones. Dex, go ahead. Are you?
They reported. Sorry, my button was broken. They actually reported that when Kim's drones came in, one of them even went as far as into Seoul and was over that airspace. So these are pretty significant incursions. Now, they don't know for sure if they're armed. Now, the SK ones they said they sent up, they claimed were reconnaissance. They weren't necessarily sending arms over, but that was the TAT was they were going to send them over and do similar reconnaissance. But some of them on the NK side, they were up for 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours, and flying around. And some were detected and some were not detected.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out more as it goes. But if the North and the South end up popping off, that could be their agenda to get it all started. And then Japan to deploy missile unit on an island near Taiwan. This is the kind of stuff that all of us called for. We said, watch Japan, because look, now they are doing offensive, preemptive moves. They were always a defensive country. And now Japan's defense ministry plans to deploy a surface-to-air guided missile unit on Yonaguni, a remote island in the southwestern Japan that is about 110 kilometers from Taiwan. Ministry spokesman Takeshi Oyoki said on Tuesday. Specifically, the ministry is set to expand the Ground Self-Defense Forces Camp Yonaguni, which is part of Okinawa Prefecture, to accommodate the unit, the spokesman said. The deployment is intended to strengthen the defense of the Nansei Islands, including Yonaguni, as China boosts its military pressure on Taiwan, sources familiar with the matter said. So, Dex, as far as they're doing these surface-to-air missiles on islands near Taiwan, doesn't this open the door for a further escalation as far as if one of these end up clapping one of Chinese planes or something? This could end up being... This is also a forward move by Japan, which has never done this historically. And this is quite quick after they just raised their defense budget.
Yeah, this is specifically something that Xi and his country are not going to be happy with. Like they do not want to see any of this, especially coming from Japan. So that's going to be a big pushback. We've seen the pushback from even Vlad against Japan and what they're doing. But in this case, this one's obviously directed directly at Xi, since they're moving it into a location that's closest to Taiwan. So definitely a precursor, I think, to some potential defense against what may be coming for Taiwan. That's certainly what it looks like, and it's definitely a different type of positioning that we've seen with Japan, and that's what we've been saying all along: is watch Japan.
Yep. As far as what Japan is going to do next, we'll follow it and we'll update you on every forward moving option they end up taking. Let's see here. See her think have some bad history in the past with Japan. Yeah, that's understatement. Well, this time it looks like they'll be on our side. I guess that's a good thing. Everybody knows that Japan was they were hardcore. They definitely had heart. Let's see here. Viv B, Texas Rob 49. What is happening? We've got Greg Martin. Let's see here. One on B. And we have Monk Searcher. What's going on, Drop? Hey, nice to see you again. Lifeboat. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. By the way, that kind of reminds me, yesterday we said we had a moment of silence for North Shore Preparedness. Sean from North Shore Preparedness had passed, if you did not know and didn't watch yesterday's show. So if you do want to stop by their channel, it's on the link from yesterday's show, and you can go say hello. I'm sure their family is probably monitoring at least the comments there. Have you seen the movie where big giant robots are building big giant robots that people can get in and stomp a car and home destroy stuff? Well, I remember, what was that? The mech movie from the 80s was probably one of my favorite movies. What was that called? Does anybody remember the big mech movie? Dex, do you remember what I'm talking about? Where they got in these giant mechs? It was kind of like Gundam.
Well, I know they did in Matrix. They were in there too.
Oh, yeah, you're right. No, these were like more like humanoid robots that they had fight each other, but they were way giant. Like they were, 30 stories tall. And the people, what was it? It's not robot. No, not robot jocks. This is in the 80s. Pacific Rim is
Pacific Rim?
No, it's much older than that. It's like 80s or 90s. It was like a kind of movie that that Russell, what's his name? Kurt Russell would be in, but he wasn't in. It was his kind of movie back then. Now I'm gonna have to remember. Nobody's getting it. It was a bad movie. Nobody's getting it either, because once I see it, I would know. It was called something Mech something, and it was an actual live action movie. Let's see here. Modernization, Voltron, nope. Gamera. What's going on? Troy Parrish is here. Julie Cook, Gerald Bennett. What is happening? And then we have Taiwan extends mandatory military service due to the Chinese invasion threat. I think I saw somebody said, who cares about all of this? So one thing I would point out is if you watch this show every day, which I don't expect you to, but the people that do, I do feel like you guys do get a bigger picture of what is happening right now. And when you see all of the pieces fall into place, and if you do give it a chance and watch for at least a week, you will start seeing the patterns of what is going to happen. You don't need us to tell you what is about to happen. You'll actually know. If you do follow all of the different ends of Earth on what they are saying, they do give you hints and clues on what is going to happen next. They give you these predictions, but also if you question every single MSM article, then you will have a general idea of what is BS, what is not, and what is propaganda. It's pretty easy to see, and especially the most important part about this show is having 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, even 1,000 people talking about an MSM article. Then you have 1,000 people in instant real time criticizing it, giving their opinions, and letting other people know what they think with no pressure to be quiet about it like you would at work. If you're at work and you talk about a story like this, you have to worry about what you're saying. Most people don't care. In chat, they'll say whatever the heck they think about it, and we move on, which is really great, and that's how you're supposed to be. But now people are restricted what they say at work and at home and even with family, because if you get on the wrong side of an issue at home, heck, people might never call you again, or they might just not show up to your Christmases anymore, or they might fire you because, heck, if you agree with the wrong political side, then you may just be claimed, labeled a name, a permanent name that doesn't apply to you in real life. Taiwan extends mandatory military service due to the Chinese invasion threat. This is another small sign and a piece of the puzzle. They are expanding something quite big. It says as tensions with Beijing continue to mount, Taiwan's president has announced that the country will extend its compulsory military service from 4 months to 1 year to better respond to any contingency, including a possible invasion launched against the island. The move comes just 24 hours after China sent a record number of aircraft and drones into Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ, 71 in all, according to Taiwan's Ministry of Defense, as well as extending the military service mandate. Soldiers will undergo more extensive training. This will include additional gunnery training and combat instruction. Primarily, these changes are expected to better prepare conscripts to defend key infrastructure, freeing up regular forces within the Republic of China Army, or ROCA, to mount a more sustained campaign against a Chinese invasion. It says the changes will come into force in 2024. There has been much speculation from senior officials that 2027, the centenary of the founding of the People's Liberation Army, could see China fully prepared to invade the island, even if Beijing currently has a preference for unification through other means. So I want to point out 2027 is also what Xi told his people, and he purposely let it leak out, and our CIA and NSA had information that, we got this information that they're basically preparing to definitely go over there and take it over by 2027. We pointed out that's a bunch of BS. They're doing all of the drills. They're spending millions upon millions, if not billions of dollars, actually sending these planes in on a daily basis, which costs millions of dollars to run. And you wouldn't have it in 5 years from now when the entire army that you're having practice invasion is literally done with their service. You're not going to have a whole fleet of people practicing for something that they're not going to be a part of. You're also not going to have your enemy have an exact time and date of when you're going to invade. That's stupid. They would basically have all of that time until 2027 to prepare and get ready for it. Also, you have to take into account that China, the U.S., and Russia have all done these war games where they only show the U.S. losing if the U.S. Fights a World War III where they're also fighting Russia and China at the same time. That includes with NATO allies and everything in this. Basically, it would split up our forces and it would take a lot of oomph out of our play. That's just the war games, and a lot of the simulations they've run basically show the U.S. the only way they would lose is if they were split, not only fighting a war against Russia, but also fighting a war against China. That's not coming just from the Global Times where they put out all of this stuff and the Shenhua and the People's Daily, but it's also coming from Pentagon think tanks and also from Russian think tanks. So with that kept in mind, you would believe that if they were going to do any kind of World War III, it would be before, Russia is doing theirs. That would mean that it would be sooner than later. Not to mention, of course, if you're going to prepare and do all these drills, which before Russia actually went into UKR, they did set up, a year before, they set up 160,000 troops right on the border, and they did a practice run. That is what looks like is happening in China in the South China Sea. They're doing a practice run, they're setting up, they're preparing, they're looking at responses from Taiwan, and then, of course, I would say that it's going to be in the next year that they do that. Does that necessarily mean that will be World War III? No, but it does mean that Taiwan is probably going to be taken over sooner than later, and we will see what the U.S. and NATO allies do when they take Taiwan. We are also preparing to build our own chips here. I pointed out when President JB went up on stage and said, everything's going to be made in America again. It's common sense when he's saying this. He's saying that it's not going to be made in China. Everything is manufactured in China now. I mean, it's you could probably look around you, and I bet you, even if you try to buy only made in America stuff, that there's something within a foot of you that is most likely had a part manufactured in China. It's sad, but it's true. And that, he said, is going to change. In that same speech, he stood up and had the guy from Intel stand up and say, and we're going to be bringing semiconductor chips to America. Why? If you look at the strategic layout of this, Taiwan is making a majority of these chips, and the world runs on these chips. All of our tech, including everything around you, is running on these chips, including your new car. Everything you own most likely has these chips in it. In fact, a regular average car has about 160 of these chips just in one car, and most of them are manufactured there. So if China takes that, not only does it give them a lot of power, it gives them a lot of leeway with the rest of the world as well. So if you put some of this together, it doesn't seem like we're going to be waiting until 2027, 5 years from now, when most of the people that are doing these extremely expensive Navy drills are probably not even going to be serving in the military anymore. Doesn't make any sense. Dex, do you have, I guess, do you disagree, agree? What's your opinion on this?
Well, it's pretty interesting, the extension they're doing. I mean, this is every 18-year-old male in their country will, they already had it where every 18-year-old male had to serve 4 months. Now they're going up to a full year, and they're expanding the basic training from to, I want to say it's now 8 weeks instead of 4 weeks or 5 weeks, what it used to be. The other thing they're doing is actually paying them more. So they used to pay them about $211 a month. Now they're going to pay them $856 a month. So that's a significant bump. They obviously don't just rely on a conscript military. They have a professional military that's people that enlist and are paid, and they want to continue to do that. But they also have this notion that every male over the age of 18 has to serve some portion of time, and that portion has now been extended. It makes me wonder how large the Army will be in the time period in the coming years, especially if their population declines or if it continues to grow. Obviously, if you're only hitting 18-year-olds and the size of your pool gets smaller over time, but I don't think they're going to have to worry about that in this time period because we're dealing with something that's fairly short in the sense that I think the event horizon on this potential invasion from Xi is sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense to be 5 years out, and it doesn't make sense to have that leaked information come out through the CIA and to public, as far as if that was a secret, I just don't see it being 5 years out, especially how fast things are moving, how fast they got that weapon up in space. And that's what I call it because that's what they called it. They said it's going to be imperative to the military defense of their country. And then they also mentioned it being an offensive weapon. So whatever is on their space station, from the time that they launched that first rocket, here's when you know they started that space station, is when the first rocket that was out of control and everybody was talking about it like, oh, this out of control rocket might hit the U.S. and people tracked it all the way until it landed. Then we had a second rocket that tracked and they said, oh, it might hit us. And then a third rocket. All three of those were a specific kind of huge rocket that obviously they didn't have a system of how to bring it down safely. All three of those were the three parts to a massive space station that is already finished. From the start of it, from that first one we tracked, from the third one that they tracked, those were the three parts. That was part of a weapon. That wasn't supposed to be done for a while. But again, we talked about how that was planned for 10 years, and they actually did it within the time period. It was like all of a sudden they released it to the public, and then it was done. But then we find out that it was planned for 10 years, and it was actually on schedule or behind by a couple months. Robot jocks. I by the way, somebody did say the right answer. It was Robot Jocks. That was the movie from the 80s or early 90s, maybe. Yeah, so by the way, I showed that. Somebody talked about Sears. We did talk about that. Redacted did a show on it as well yesterday. We did talk about that, and that is on yesterday's show. That was what I was showing you. This is the specific information on it, and you can find it on yesterday's show. This is the exercise that the Johns Hopkins Center was doing. And again, this is a tabletop exercise that was done recently in October, on October 23rd. And it's around the same time that they did it. If you go back in time, right before December, back in 2019, we're almost on the same time frame. And now everybody is talking. We pointed out that in Xi's country, they're saying that the tsunami of CV is coming. It's kind of odd timing. Considering it's like deja vu all over again. So I hope that's not the case. That's why we're asking people to prepare, and we're serious about it. Like, have extra food, have extra water, just in case something like this happens again. Also, I would encourage anybody to have if you have a small business, specifically, we had friends that lost their hair salon. Their hair salon was closed down for 4 or 5 months. They did not have rent for those months saved up. They only had like 1 or 2 months, and they actually had money saved up. They were not able to pay rent for the whole time because they weren't able to rent out their hair salon to different people that cut hair, and therefore they lost their business. The government kind of funds did not cover it, and they ended up losing their hair salon. I would say if you own a small business, make sure to have a pillow, some sort of, fallback plan if the CV type thing happens again and it's worse. And then Xi is losing its place as the center of the world's supply chains. Here are 5 places supply chains are going instead. Dex, do you want to cover where this is kind of, because of their lockdowns and everything else, it spurred other countries to do? It seems kind of fishy when you kind of see what they're doing in the back end, but it also seems like it was a result of them locking down, right?
It certainly was. And we've talked about it at a high profile level, like somebody like Apple, who took a beating in the holiday season because they didn't have any product to sell, or they had very little product to sell because of their total reliance or their significant reliance on Xi's country. They had come out early on in the year and said, hey, we're moving. We're putting stuff in some of these other countries. So the countries that seem to be picking up quite a bit of steam right now, India being one of them. We know that specifically because Apple went there. They didn't completely move there, but they're expanding there. A lot of other companies are now expanding there. Vietnam is another one that's been doing rapid expansion. Thailand, Bangladesh, and I think specifically Bangladesh has a huge, or not huge, but much lower, I should say, cost salary for workers, even over Xi's country. I want to say it's $120. It's 1/5 of what a factory worker makes in southern China. So I think they make about $670. So that's a huge savings there for these manufacturing companies. And then Malaysia being the 5th one. And all of these countries are obviously getting wealthy real quick with the actions that Xi took with the zero policy. That's just basically taking all these companies that were relying on that manufacturing, and they're all instantly going, we need to have a backup plan, or we need to just think about moving somewhere else completely, one of the two. And that, no matter what, that's going to hurt their overall GDP, and it's going to help all of these other countries that have already been in this manufacturing process. I mean, every country I named, you probably have products from there. It's not like we don't have shirts that are made in, Thailand, or, shoes from Vietnam or other things. So it's that they're not uncommon that manufacturing is happening there. It's not like these are up and comers, but they're certainly picking up a ton of this type of manufacturing business, and it's going to hurt Xi significantly.
It also points that if we are depending less on Xi, that something may be in the works for us to cut them out of the picture, or for us to actually be facing them at some point. Do want to point out, when people talk about the deja vu of that thing we were referring to, I want to point out the movie Songbird. What was that called? Wasn't it called something like, it was actually called like CV-23, and it came out. And what was so freaky about that movie is it came out like in 2020, like only a few months after the whole thing came out. I remember, Dex, do you remember when Songbird came out? I told you to watch it, and you even made a comment about, like, how did they already have this done? This is a big budget, like, it was a big budget movie, and it takes time to shoot those. It was almost like they were shooting it at the same time it was starting. And the plot from it even had the names of what we were talking about. And everybody was shocked. Did you guys remember how Songbird, how quickly it came out, and how everybody was like, whoa, what the heck? And in the plot, I think it was called CV, but it was called the word 23. And it showed that it mutated multiple times until it was this thing that ate away at your brain. What's so freaking crazy is that is what is in this new exercise. The side effects in the exercise are almost exactly what they are talking about in Songbird. Songbird was absolutely freaky. It makes you wonder, most definitely. Viv B did not waste my time watching Songbird. I would say if you haven't seen it, I would waste it was a short movie. It had this plot that is so scarily true, and when you look at the time that it was released, it's pretty freaky. When you look at what they're talking about with SEE and RS, it's freaky. Little Nam says, like Contagion. That movie, so crazy how many things that were close to real life with that. And they used experts basically saying how it would play out in that movie. And then just a short few years later, we're like, whoa, this is like it came from a movie script or something. All right, and then before we move on, vivid new photos give you a rare look at the South China Sea islands that a top U.S. commander says China has fully militarized. By the way, 5 years ago, people were calling me an idiot for saying that these basically piles of dirt were going to be forward operating bases. I just want to point that out. But beforehand, I do want to remind you, real quick, go over to EMP Shield if you haven't already, marfooglenews.com/EMP. Anytime you go and support any of our affiliates, it ends up not only protecting yourself, but it ends up helping our show. The EMP Shield is the same company that has worked with agencies like DHS, DOD to help outfit them and to protect them from an EMP or a CME. And it's also the same protection you can get for yourself. We actually started with them before they got huge contracts under T-Man. When T-Man was in office, they did a whole task force for EMP, and they ended up getting called up for DHS, the EMP Resilience Report, and they're actually in it. That same report warned Americans in 2018 that they should have 6 months to a year worth of food, which at the time everybody was like, whoa, 6 months to a year. Now people know why. The information came out that if we do have a full grid down scenario from either an EMP or a major CME, a Carrington level event, it could actually have a death toll of 90% of America would pass, and that's all because infrastructure would completely break down. We would not have drinkable water. So go to marfooglenews.com/EMP. You can actually protect all of your devices. You can protect your car, your trucks, your motorcycles. You can protect your home. You can protect, of course, even your ham radio. They make a device for almost everything. This company is absolutely awesome. They are, again, a veteran-owned business, 100% American-made, and you can get rolling even after multiple EMPs hit your car. So that's pretty impressive. Go to marfooglenews.com/EMP to find out more. And then again, you will get $50 off per device when you go through that code. So if you have a bunch of cars to outfit and you're like, dang, that's going to be a lot. Again, you make sure to use this code. You'll get a discount on each one of them. I want to bring up that I'm not trying to say I told you so, but it's like people seriously push back, and I don't know why at the time. If you look at where we were at, people were saying that this was going to be an oil rig. People pushed back on it. I don't know why. There was like so much ganda coming out from Xi's side and probably their online people that there was this narrative, and I don't know if it was all bots saying this, but there were comment after comment on my old videos when they first started dredging up the dirt from the bottom of the water and making these islands. And when it started to look at the very first, state, when it started to look like a runway, I said they're making a forward operating base. They're making a military base out of this. This is a naval base. Everybody said I was idiots, or maybe they were, bots or part of their online army. But I remember like it was yesterday, people saying, this isn't a military island, this is an oil rig. They're doing an oil rig. They're doing something for an experiment for the environment. There was all sorts of narratives that came out. Meanwhile, when this first happened, before all of this happened, there were planes that were flying over it, and China would get on the horn and say, you are in Chinese airspace, evacuate now, get out now. We're going to send a shot over the bow if you don't leave now. Now it is very, very clear what it is. I mean, look at this. Look at those radar domes. Look at, there's SAM missiles, there's air missiles, there's military bases. It is full-on airways. There are, of course, runways. There are military planes. There are naval docks for their Navy. There are fueling bays. It is very, very clear what the purpose of this thing is. It's not to drill oil. This is to house military units. So it said that now there's new photos. Want to see what China's island bases in the South China Sea look like? Take a look at some of the startling images taken by Getty Images photographer Ezra Akayan in October. They show airfields, radar installations, and military aircraft and warships stationed in the Spratly Islands, which are about 400 miles from the Chinese coast. Beijing has used both natural and artificial islands to build up its military capabilities in the area. The function of those islands is to expand the offensive capability of the PRC beyond the continental shores. That was, of course, John Aquilino, head of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, warned in March, referring to the country's official name, says the People's Republic of China. It says from those bases, Chinese forces can fly fighters, bombers, plus all of those offensive capabilities of missile systems, such as anti-ship and anti-aircraft missiles. Aquilino told the Associated Press at the time, calling the islands fully militarized. This photo shows an airfield on Subi Reef, which China claimed in 1998 has built up to create an artificial island large enough to accommodate military installations. A double runway, hangars, a multi-story administrative buildings are all very clearly visible. So Dex, can we get there was actually several photos, and I don't think there only one loaded here. Can we get some of the photos, because it is pretty interesting to see all of them. Again, we don't use the original article. We always convert it over to this, so we don't end up getting a bunch of pop-up ads that slows down the show. And then I guess I could click on each link here, but
it's not a good site to do that with, and I'm trying to. But
okay,
you guys can go look at it.
Okay, so we'll show you here in a second. And then I guess the main point, though, is that this was something that we knew about for years. You guys knew. If you've watched my show for a very long time, back then, the same things were being said that are being said now about future events, saying, oh, this is just fear-mongering. It's an oil rig. It's very clear that this is serious business and that they are making forward operating bases. They're getting ready for something massive. They're not just building these for no reason. Thank you, Lola Cafe. Thank you for your support. I appreciate you. Thank you for the super sticker. Same for Carol White. Thank you, and thank you. Love the hippopotamus there. Thank you. Charity Sullivan, in God we trust, walk by faith. Thank you, and God bless you, Charity. I appreciate that. And then Christina Martocchio says, thanks, Adam and Dex, for being here for the Foogle fam so long. I've been here since January 2020, and rarely do I miss a night. Love you guys, and just had to stop and say hi for the first time. Just call me Tina. Well, thank you, Tina. Martocchio. I think I said that right. Thank you, and thank you. Big Fish is in the house. Let's see here. Aunt Jenny. Who said that? Yeah, no, I don't. It says Marf sees the future. No, I do not. Everybody that watches the show puts together the same pieces. It's pretty simple to see, and some people get on our case. We have independent news. We have news from all over the world, but we also go deep into MSM, and we question every article with thousands of people questioning those same articles and giving their opinion on it. Think about this. If you don't have anyone else's knowledge of what is in an MSM article, think about what you may think about that. You will read it, and your brain might just process it and consider it fact. But if you have 100 people around you going, hey, that article's BS, then that's going to make you question it, and that's going to be where you get a general consensus of what people really think about it. Also, MSM, if you go back from major events, beforehand, there's always some sort of evidence that people knew about it beforehand. Before September of 2001, there were articles talking about it. And of course, after 2001, all of us found all of these things. They predicted it. They said that there were risks for this. They said that there was all these weird things going on. They said, all sorts of things about all of the missing money and all of these different things. And they even called out things about, pilots being trained at these places. We've called out similar things right now as far as half of what was it, Dex? Half of the Iraqi pilots that the U.S. was training have gone missing. And this is after 2001. It's it was half of we've actually been training pilots and they've basically gone missing. I mean, there's things like this that we see beforehand from MSM and that you can pull out little clues from the future. It's absolutely insane how much information actually gets predicted before it happens. And then not now, Europe's second war threatens to explode. Not now, Europe. It says, as Russia's unprovoked conflict in UKR heads towards its one-year anniversary, another European flashpoint is in danger of reigniting a second war on the continent. It says Kosovo was at the center of the last all-out conflict in Europe in the late 90s, and tensions have never been fully dissipated. Hold on, you guys. What the heck is going on here? There we go. It says that Kosovo is at the center of the last all-out conflict in Europe, and the tensions have never fully dissipated. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić has this week put out its army on highest level of combat readiness to protect ethnic Serbian areas in northern Kosovo, he says, are under threat from Kosovo. Vučić says that his military will take all measures to protect our people and preserve Serbia. On December 10th, ethnic Serbs in the north erected 9 roadblocks that essentially divide the area where some 50,000 ethnic Serbs live, angering the Kosovo government in Pristina, which was led by an Albanian majority. Sunday, reports of a bang-bang event near a NATO peacekeeping patrol unit set off the latest wave of tensions. Kosovo was the site of the last conflict in Europe, which ended when NATO launched a military campaign ordered by then U.S. President Bill Clinton in March 1999 that lasted for 78 days. Serbia finally signed a peace accord agreeing to leave Kosovo, but the two countries have never enjoyed real peace. NATO peacekeepers have been present in the country since 1999. That war sent more than 600,000 Kosovo refugees into Europe. Kosovo, of course, declared independence from Serbia in 2008, which Serbia does not recognize. The latest tensions come amid warnings that factions in each country could take advantage of the world's attention focused on Vlad's conflict, and the Kosovo government has not confirmed or denied reports that it is planning an attack on Serbian ethnic areas in the north of the country. Dex, people don't pay attention to these smaller areas, especially if they're in the United States or Canada or Europe. Europe pays attention to a lot more, but over here you don't really hear much about this other than in history class, right? But this is a potential hot point on top of 10 other hot points all over the world that are all having problems right now?
And it's you may remember the movie, I think it was Behind Enemy Lines. Who's that actor that was in it? But that comes from this time period back in '99 when the Kosovo in the NATO peacekeepers went in, and there was a lot of conflict going on in that area. It was a long period. It wasn't that long. It was 78 days, but it was long enough. And it was, it was pretty bad for the people that lived there. It was maybe short-lived for NATO's involvement, but it was ongoing for a long time before. And there was a lot of atrocities through that. And if this starts up again, that would put, two conflicts happening at the same time within Europe, which is kind of a big deal. And it would also be something that NATO would probably be involved in at some level.
And if NATO is involved, then you have the possibility for an Article 4 meeting and then an Article 5 response. So it's something to pay attention to. Somebody said it may be a distraction. It very well may be. But at the same point, it's not getting, major headlines. It's kind of on the back burner. And we do search out the back burner stuff because that back burner stuff is really what ends up being a big deal. The big thing that's on the front page of every paper, those are usually the distractions. The stuff that they don't talk about that's everybody thinks when there's big events that it comes out of nowhere, but really there's a lot of information before it happens that comes out, but people just aren't paying attention to it. Thank you, Zippy Moons, for the Ninja Sled. I appreciate that. Thank you for the massive support over on DLive. I appreciate you. And then thank you for gifting out badges. It looks like at least Aunt Jenny and some others grabbed one. And then Texas Rob 49, thank you. Adam, was it Robot Jocks? And yes, it was. And somebody guessed that, but it didn't look right when I read it first. But it was totally Robot Jocks. And I know because they gave away Robot Jocks in a Happy Meal. There were a few other movies that, I don't know if you guys remember this, but when Happy Meals, when you were a kid, not only did they do like real glass cups and things on certain Happy Meals, but at one point they were doing VHS tapes. They did the Addams Family, they did Batman Returns or Batman the Original, and then they did Robot Jocks. Was one of the movies that McDonald's gave away. I'm pretty sure that was one of the VHSs that I got, and I remember it was a big budget movie, but it totally like flopped. So probably why it ended up in a Happy Meal. And then Texas Rob says, it was me, Adam. I'm old, LOL. Yep. Well, we're all getting there. And then Big Fish, thank you. Thank you for being here again. And Jos CND, 100% Mo, And Carbs, thank you for following. Dex, do you want to go over the Vorreich to be created?
Certainly. So buckle up. This is a crazy prediction, and it's coming from Dmitry Medvedev. So, in a hypothesis, deputy chair of the Security Council of the Vlad Federation, Dmitry Medvedev, on Monday contributed to the predictions of 2023 and said that Poland and Hungary will occupy the western parts of former UKR and the area of Germany and its satellites, including Poland, the Baltic states, Chechnya, Slovakia, and the Kiev Republic, and other outcasts, and will be incorporated into the Fourth Reich. So he's basically saying they're all going to come together. And then specifically carrying on, he says that there is a war that is likely to break out between France and the fourth group there. In the process, Europe will be divided where Poland is repartitioned. So he also claims that Northern Ireland will separate from the UK and join the Republic of Ireland. The high-ranking Russian official tweeted on Twitter. And so he's gone through a whole lot of these predictions, and they're pretty extreme. He also predicted that Britain will join the EU, I guess rejoin the EU, and following which the EU witnessed a collapse, and a euro, and will drop out the use of the former EU currency. He said on social media, he said that the Brexit was their withdrawal of the UK from the EU, but that happened back in 2020, but it's going to come back together, and that the euro and the dollar will stop circulating as the global reserve currency. So these are some monster predictions coming from, a pretty high-ranking, official from Vlad's country, Dmitry Medvedev. We've talked quite a bit about him. But for him to come out with these, they're pretty significant. He also claims that the U.S. will have its own internal conflict, its own civil conflict that will break out in the U.S. and California as a result of which Texas will become an independent state. So some pretty outlandish claims on one hand, but on the other hand, you have to ask, does this guy know something, and is he just sort of like dumping what he knows out into the public, or is he just making waves and having fun and creating some crazy predictions for 2023?
Now hold on, let me fix this.
He also made predictions about oil prices as well, that they'll rise to 150 a barrel, and gas prices will top $5 per 1 cubic meter. So some additional predictions. I mean, this guy's gone completely in depth in his predictions for the future.
And that's what's so freaky about this. So a couple of people said, not buying it. So these are so specific. If you read through this entire thing, not only is he calling it out, this is Medvedev, all right? This isn't just some average Joe, or it's not some guy from a tabloid that makes predictions and writes, predictions. This is Medvedev, which is quite freaky for him to not only be saying, of course, the very specific things he's saying, but he's declaring it out in a very, very specific manner, like he knows exactly what is going to happen. Now, it very well could be, some sort of propaganda, this or that, but just obviously take it with a huge grain of salt. But at the same time, what if he is right? What if there's something he knows? He's even saying that Elon will win the election after we have a civil conflict. And then you go to these other little things like, what was the quote? It was Mr. Gates said that the next thing where we all put our ballot in the box will not only be hung, he said there will be a civil conflict. And he used war. He said there will be a civil war. Not there may be, or it looks like it, or maybe there'll be this. He said there will be. What do these guys know? Why does Vlad have a Noah's Ark plan to get, a evacuation plan called Noah's Ark? Why is Elon showing a freaking space ark going to space? Why do these guys make comments like this? Why did he go so very specific in these predictions and just kept going and said, this is what's going to happen here. This is what's going to happen here. This is what's going to happen here. There has to be something in the back of your mind going, well, what if? Euro and dollar will stop circulating as a global reserve. Digital fiat currencies will be actively used instead of the Bretton Woods system of monetary management will collapse, leading to the IMF and World Bank crash. This is something that has been predicted for years. While making predictions for the forthcoming year, Medvedev further stated that civil conflict will break out in the U.S., California, as a result of which Texas will become an independent state, saying that Texas and California will secede. It says he also added that Elon Musk will win. Where is he getting this stuff? We're not even talking about him running yet. But I will say there's a lot of people calling. I see it everywhere. People saying
he can't run.
Elon 2024. He's not a citizen, right? Or doesn't he not fit?
Well, he is. He's just not born here, so he's not qualified.
Yeah, unless we change our constitution, which who knows? I'm surprised he didn't say that as well. Or if our constitution changes after Texas and California secede and then they make some sort of new constitution. By the way, they have been talking about amending the constitution, right? Wasn't there this huge push and this thing to possibly go in and tweak the constitution? What if that ends up happening? And by the way, remember when we covered, it was like, however, they just needed a few more states to actually do it, and then they could go in and tweak the Constitution. Do you remember that? This was a few months ago. They were trying to get all the numbers together, and they only needed a few more. Dex, do you remember? Did we cover this, or was this something?
I don't recall exactly what you're referring to. I'm sorry.
It was basically all these states that have voted to go, and there's a specific word to go in and change the Constitution, and they had like 30 something states, something like that. So let me go to DuckDuckGo. I got to find this real quick so I can show you what I mean. I'm just thinking in future terms, right? Yes, Nebraska, the 17th state, calling for the convention to amend the U.S. Constitution. This was in January of 2022. And there's a group, and it says that there's all of these states, other states, Georgia, your state is one of them. It says Nebraska comes the 17th state calling for the convention, and they only need so many. It says the Nebraska legislature overcame the filibuster by approving, and this has happened over years. It actually, so once the state says it's going to do it, it's been it's been years or even a decade since the first one joined on to this thing, and it says the resolution will be withdrawn February of 2027. So we have until this year. And if they get all of the states, they could change the actual Constitution, which means they could also change and amend something that says that you have to be born here to be president. I'm just thinking of how could this actually come true, right? It's quite a thing to think about. This was big news that the guys that are part of this group, even I believe they even went on like Steven Crowder, and they were talking about, like, people are afraid of doing this because they said it could make it worse. It says the motivation for the convention is real and valid, said State Senator John McCollister of Omaha, and said the World Herald reported, but there are simply too many questions outstanding. Earlier this week, Wisconsin had become the 16th. So within a week, they had two more states added. It says the AP reported it had been the first state to do so since Mississippi in 2019. Other states approving for a call of a convention are Georgia, Alaska, Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, Indiana, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arizona, North Dakota, Texas, Missouri, Arkansas, Utah. And it says, according to the Convention of States Action, there are also 19 other states considering the resolution. The only way amendments have been made in the past is through Congress proposing them to states under Article 5 of the Constitution, the National Constitution reported. So they could literally take the entire Constitution and rework things. They could change things. They could edit things. That is what scares a lot of people. Some people are for it. If you have an argument for it or against it, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear it. Thank you, Kiwi Lass from New Zealand. I appreciate your support. Thank you. Says, are we going to see universal soldiers? Let's see here. What was that comment? It says, are we going to see universal soldier? That was another, wasn't that Jean-Claude Van Damme or something? I bet we would. Isn't that the one where he's like half robot? Vic Santiago, thank you for your support. Thank you for the super sticker. Matthew Michael says, I heard JB flagellated in an elevator today. Sources stated that it was wrong on so many levels. I've heard that joke so many different ways. Yeah, I don't know if he farted on an elevator, but that would be wrong on literally so many levels. Obama was placed. Why not Musk? Well, be real. That's because they said that he was, and they, well, I don't know. I think it's pretty public that Elon wasn't born here, but maybe they could print one out. I don't know. And then, Dex, do you want to cover? Let's see here. We've got the UN has said nuclear war is back within the realm of possibility.
So here we have yet again more commentary coming out about this threat, this potential threat of nuclear. It seems to be that they don't want to let it go out of the light, so to speak, from the media. So they keep pushing these stories, specifically around the hypersonics, specifically around, in this particular case, they're talking about locations, and they publish a map, which I don't know if there's a picture of it in here or not. If not, we can probably pull it up. I'll see if I can find it. But what some of the targets, which I'm sure everybody here has seen before. These are nothing. This is nothing new. We've got apps that tell us what would happen if it, you can predict where it's going to hit, and you can see what the outcome would be, and et cetera. So there's all sorts of maps that have been out there for this. But I guess the main point is this continues to be a hot topic for the media, for the Ganda that is being pushed out, and specifically around the whether or not there is going to be this potential use, whether it's tactical or even worse at a global level, nuclear, and if it goes that way. And I guess part of this is just coming off of the commentary that's coming from Vlad. It's even coming from our leadership that said I think he was one of the ones that said we're at the worst possible time we've ever been, or something. Like, I don't want to quote him incorrectly, but basically saying we're at a pretty bad state right now, as far as our potential for having a large scale conflict. So again, it is what it is. I don't, I'm not gonna run off and go climb in a hole right now over it, but it's something to be considered, and it's something we need to pay attention to when the media is talking about it, and or large leaders, whether it's the UN or other leaders from the opposite side, or even our own country saying that as well.
Oh, and by the way, I want to point out we covered the B-21 Raiders. Let's see if I can find the Doolittle raid. I meant to do that yesterday or the day before. It does have something to do with it. The Doolittle raid, known as the Tokyo raid, was an air raid. Hold on. Let's see here. Was an air raid sometimes known as the Great Tokyo Air Raid, the bombing of Tokyo. Was an air raid on 18th of April, 1942 by the United States on the Japanese capital, Tokyo, and other places on Honshu during World War II. It was the first American air operation to strike the Japanese archipelago. Although the raid caused comparatively minor damage, it demonstrated that the Japanese mainland was vulnerable to American air attacks. And the reason why they thought it wasn't possible is because our planes couldn't make it that far. Well, what they did is they stripped down any defensive stuff on these planes, and these boys went out there basically with zero defenses, and I think they did like a flag or something, but that was about it. They only had offensive capabilities, so they could not defend themselves. They stripped off even the machine guns. They couldn't even defend themselves in a dogfight. They took all of that off so there would be less weight, and so they could make it all the way to Tokyo. It said under the final plan, 16 B-25B Mitchell medium bombers, each with a crew of 5, were launched from the U.S. aircraft carrier USS Hornet in the Pacific Ocean off Japan. There were no fighter escorts. After bombing the military and industrial targets, the crews were to continue westward to the land in China. On the ground raid, killed about 50 people, injured about 400. I was wondering if it showed you. They stripped down. It served as an initial retaliation for the December 7th, 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor and provided an important boost to American morale. The raid was planned, led by and named after Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle. Now that goes after this raid. The B-21 Raiders, our new state-of-the-art stealth bombers, are actually meant to be able to go in and destroy whole cities and whole countries before they even know we're coming. They are part of our preventative system as well. So these B-21 new stealth bombers that can basically go without being detected, that is something that they could believe we would do, and they could end up doing a preemptive strike, and that's what they were saying. Under this quote here, they were basically saying that. Let's see here. It said, this is a direct quote. It says, the U.S., have it in their strategy. In the documents, it is spelled out. A preventative blow. Putin said at a news conference in Kyrgyzstan, we don't. We, on the other hand, have formulated a retaliatory strike in our strategy. So if we're talking about this disarming strike, then maybe think about adopting the best practices of our American partners and their ideas for ensuring their security. He said, we're just thinking about it. Basically saying, hey, if you guys have a preventative plan, maybe we'll have one too. And maybe we're just thinking about it. Saying that they would strike us first. Mind you, we were in the same position before Japan bombed us, where we were sending money and gear and military equipment to Europe, almost exactly like we are now. And there were even the same groups, even by the same names, shouting out saying, why are we sending money over there? Why are we sending gear over to Europe when we need money here? We have people here starving and we're sending humanitarian aid over there, right? The same thing is happening today. What made the difference, what just absolutely catapulted us in, was an attack on Pearl Harbor. See what we're getting to here? Is there a plan? And now you've got Russian ships off of Hawaii, surveillance ships. You've got Chinese ships off of Hawaii. You also have them doing these drills in the South China Sea. You have the Spratly Islands that have been put up. Will there be a harbor 2.0? We don't know, but I do know that they have separated and they've spread out all of our Navy. Our Navy is all over the place right now. So it'd be really hard, and I haven't seen where and they even took off. Last year, there may have been a heightened alert or something because they basically split up our Navy all over the place, which should have happened before Pearl Harbor. We had a bunch of ships just sitting there waiting, literally lined up like ducks. And they knew that, and that's why they did it. Again, before that happened, they spied on Pearl Harbor. They got all of the schedules down, everything they needed. Well, look at what China's doing right now. China's putting police stations in all of the NATO countries. Almost every one of them lines up with one of the allies or our allies, and they're putting agents on the ground in every country. Some people believe that those are spies doing surveillance before some sort of big conflict. It's just a thought. Think about it. It's pretty nuts. What could get us pulled in real quick is if we're directly attacked. That's for sure. And then the West is trying to take out Vlad. That is, of course, the Russian president's crony issues bizarre predictions for 2023. We'll go over that in just a second. If you don't have extra food or water, definitely stock up on water every time you go to the store. Otherwise, also check out the Alexa Pure Pro over on marfooglenews.com/prep. It is a gravity-fed filtration system that gets rid of 99.9% of contaminants. It also can protect your water from other nasty stuff, which, again, people are not too trusting of water nowadays. So if you do want to filter it out, the Alexa Pure Pro is over there. Their main thing, though, is their MREs and their freeze-dried foods. You can get a 3-month supply for $200 off and the lowest price it's been since we have worked with them in 2019, which is, again, under $600 now for 3 months of food. It breaks down to about $200 a month and all of the food you need to survive. That's 3 months for one person, or a month and a half or 6 weeks for two people, or break it up even farther from that. If you don't have extra food, which the majority of America has 3 days of food and water in their house, then I'd highly recommend looking at this. Go to marfooglenews.com/prep to get our grandfathered in discount. Again, they also have $70 off on the 1 month supply as well. You can also get a single MRE. You can do a little bit at a time. I know folks like FG just do a little bit every time they get paid. They get a couple things here and there, and they keep building up. That's also a smart thing to do as well, especially with all of the Christmas and different sales that are going on. All right, and then, Dex, do you want to talk about some of these bizarre predictions for 2023?
Yeah, so this is kind of a continuation of what we talked about in the other article, but specifically what was called out in here was that the one of the veteran foreign ministers and Moscow hawk, Lavrov, told TASS, a state agency, that quote unquote anonymous officials in the Pentagon are openly plotting to the attempted taking out of Putin. And specifically quoting, Washington is ahead of the others as some anonymous officials from the Pentagon actually voiced threats to deliver a quote unquote decapitating strike, which, by the way, that's a term used meaning taking out the head of a country, on the Kremlin, which is in fact a threat of attempted taking out of Putin. So that is what's being claimed, and he then also warned if such ideas are really pondered by some, then someone should think better about possible consequences of such plans. So, amongst all those other predictions we were talking about, which were coming from Medvedev, this one from Lavrov is very specific in his accusations of the Pentagon and those accusations of officials there that are attempting to or have been putting plans together to do this type of strike against the Kremlin. If this is true, and if it happens, it's an even bigger thing. I would be surprised if it would come from the Pentagon. Personally, I think it would probably be something that would be done by our 3-letter agencies that do covert type stuff, although that's not necessarily done without the Pentagon. But I don't know. It's pretty bold of a statement coming from them. It's also not out of the realm of what has been discussed over the last 6 months. They've always said, Putin's hiding. He's always, his security level is, as the threats against him are so much higher. But I think a lot of people were more worried about insiders than necessarily the Pentagon doing anything. So the fact that he's coming right out and saying the Pentagon is looking at this type of strike against the Kremlin, that's kind of big.
Well, and also if they think that if for some reason, look at Kim Jong-un, right? I just wonder, because why did Kim Jong-un do the thing he did, right? He did it to where he set up his system now, and this is what he publicly said, is if they try to do that same kind of strike on them, taking the head off the snake, that doesn't matter how it is, if they even question it, if the guy next to him faints, that he believes that they're trying to take him out, then it will automatically be nukes towards the USA. If they do think this, if they're really thinking this, or if they actually have information that says that the U.S. was trying to take them out, would they then, is this why they're talking about a preemptive strike? Is this why they're beating their chest and doing the saber rattling, saying, hey, we heard about your plan to take me out. if that's the case, then we'll send all of our nukes your way, or there will be consequences or whatever. We don't know if this is based on information that the public doesn't have. It just seems weird that this would all come out. As far as the predictions, not only from Medvedev, but from Lavrov and others, why are they all saying this? And very specific ones. You have to realize these are presidents in their country. They're going to be quoted in books for the rest of their life. When they say something, it's quoted in history books, right? Especially Medvedev, having held that the highest position at one point. It says Washington is ahead of the others as some anonymous officials from the Pentagon actually voiced threats to deliver a strike on the Kremlin, which is in fact a threat of an attempt of taking out the Russian president. And then also this other prediction that this specific one that's come out from multiple people now, saying the Kremlin worldview also sees the United Kingdom breaking apart with Northern Ireland joining the Irish Republic. Where are these coming from? Or do they know? Are they saying this out loud to say like, hey, we already know about what people are planning, what is happening, and then to say that there's going to be a civil conflict in the U.S.? Look at what has been happening. Look at what people have theorized. Look at how our country is so divided, and there's been all of this artificial push to hate each other, right? It kind of makes you wonder if they're putting out a plan. Maybe they're actually telling the rest of the world, like, hey, look what's in it for you guys. This is what they're trying to do, at least. They could have just put out the whole playbook and said, hey, we're going to tell more if you don't be quiet or if you don't stop meddling or something. I don't know. Or it could be all a big distraction. It could all be Ganda. You got to question and go with your gut feeling. Don't listen to us. Again, what's funny is people talk about us. We're just telling you, hey, take all of this information and keep running it through the laundry machine and figure out on your own. I'm not telling you what to believe. I just tell you my opinion, and you come up with your own. If anybody is telling you not to listen to information, that's kind of loopy. We're not telling you what to think or what to do. We're telling you this is what we think. This is what you should be looking at. You should, we gather stuff from all over the world. You should pay attention to this stuff because it's some pretty serious stuff. There are others, my peers, that are just straight up saying we are about to be at war. I believe so too. But you can believe what you want to believe. Look at all the little pieces falling into place right now. It is scary, but you don't have to be afraid. You can be prepared. Again, this is something that we've known about for years. All of the things we called out before are now coming true. The patterns are there. All right, and then thank you again over on DLive. Leo X White, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for the bell. Thank you again, everybody. Be Real Beast, Burrell Beast. Appreciate it. Kiwi Lass and everybody else that has popped in. Almost 4,000 in chat. Thank you. Vic Santiago, Matthew Michael, Christina Mortocchio, or Tina Mortocchio, and then Charity Sullivan and everybody else. Thank your mods tonight. They've done a really great job. Dex, let's go over the web-only content. There's a lot of crazy stuff here.
Exactly. Head over to marfooglenews.com, click on the thumbnail for the show, or open up the show notes link. It's in the description on YouTube or on Rumble. It's real easy. Just click on it. It'll take you right here to the webpage with all the news we just covered. And then you'll get to this overflow section, this yellow bar with the rest of the story. So lots of things happening in there. There's some updates. I wouldn't really call it an update, but some positions that are being stated about the potential power station attacks and who they're fearing is doing that. That extreme kind of word that they like to throw around. There's updates on what's going on in the Peru protests, and unfortunately people are perishing there. We see more and more of these protests in different countries happening. We'll try to cover what, and especially the ones that really get big and break out. We'll keep you updated on them. There's for those of you that have had the catalytic converters stolen, which has been a really big thing over the last couple of years, especially through CV, but into with the economy going down, we're actually seeing cars dealers now, actually not dealers, but the actual manufacturers building anti-theft guards now on catalytic converters. So I guess that's kind of something I think we all wish we had, because if you ever cranked your car up and somebody has stolen your catalytic converter, it's pretty loud, and then it's also super expensive to repair. So that's I guess one of the first I think I've ever heard of somebody doing that. I know there's a lot of aftermarkets that are doing it, but coming right out from the car manufacturers now. The FDA is looking into potentially regulating food with CBD in it. There's a huge what's being called a atmospheric river hitting Northern California, which basically what that means is a ton of rain. It's a lot of rain, and it's potentially going to have a lot of flooding. So a lot of people in California are getting prepared. I don't think that they need 15, 20 inches of rain to have flooding. They only need 3 or 4 inches, and it sounds like that's what they're going to be getting, is lots of that, something they don't normally get at those levels. And for an area that's been stricken by drought, they're definitely going to get more than their fair share of water. So for those of you in that area, make sure you're preparing for the potential of flooding, and we'll keep an eye on what that atmospheric river, as they call it, continues to do as it moves in. Some interesting things going on. Obviously, there's still a lot of updates going on with Xi's country around CV, and the what's happening in their hospitals. A lot of that kind of stuff was reminiscent of what we saw a couple years ago. It seems like a repeat. It's all happening again over there. Even schools here in America are considering making some changes after the winter break. That's there. We've got a few updates on, I think I mentioned this earlier in the show about SK apologizing for failing to shoot down NK's drones. That's here. Southwest is having a huge problem. A lot of airlines are having cancellations still after all of this freezing weather we had. It's still leaving a lot of people stranded. So there's updates on that, including places like Buffalo that are completely iced in are still getting more snow. So there's the updates with all the political stuff with T-Man and other things that were going on. A potential leak of Twitter data. Somebody is claiming they have it. We'll find out more as that evolves. But on the dark areas of the web, they've got potentially a treasure trove of information they're saying is for sale. And lots of other updates, including updates with what's going on with Disney and Bolsonaro from Brazil. And of course, other updates on Tesla / Elon are in here as well. So if you're looking for the rest of the story, it's all here. Head over to marfooglenews.com, click on the thumbnail for the show, and scroll down to that overflow section. You'll find all of this and much more that I didn't tell you about. Easy to get to. We put it together for you every night.
Well, thank you, Dex, and I appreciate you guys. And thank you, everybody that popped in. And thank you to the mods. Thank you for doing an amazing job keeping it a peaceful and awesome place. I appreciate you. Laura Gittins, Jaleesa, Carol McLean, what is happening? T-Rex, thank you. Tritter, Cole Cracker, nice to see you again. And VZ Fat Cat, thank you. Jamie Garcia, and of course, Texas Rob 49, Bobby Shizzy, Black Hole is what we've seen in the past, which processed bread. Thanks, Marf Gang, says Jamie Roy. Thank you. Till we meet again. That is right. Thank you so much to all of the people that support our independent show here. I appreciate you. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much. And of course, you have a wonderful night. Dex, thank you. Thank you for your service tonight.
Much love. Great job, brother.
And stay tuned. The next couple days, we'll not only have special guests, we'll have some awesome stuff, but we're putting together something very special. So stay tuned and much love. All right, guys. Thank you. Have a wonderful night. Be safe. Be prepared. And Marf out. It's time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout out. It's a shoutro. Where we say thank you to the people that matter most. You.
I was walking down and I mentioned his crown and I said his name. Once to blame. I was walking down and I mentioned his crown and I said his name. Once to blame. I was walking down. blame. I was walking down and I mentioned his crown and I said his name. Once to blame. I was walking. Santiago and the Kiwi lads, Artina Mar, Dolce, oh, I say, oh, we, oh, oh, we, oh, I say the charity, so loving and Caraway, Lola Cafe, Tristan Early, Kevin C. and open truth ministry. I see the 20 prosperity 12 and a change of keys, a change of keys. I was walking down and I mentioned his crown and I said his name. Once to blame. I was walking down and I mentioned. was walking down.
Well, let's make a new one.